All right, so get ready to dive into a world you probably don't think about too much until maybe you smell something funky.
Yeah,
The often invisible world of household mold.
right.
You've sent over some fascinating articles from Rainbow Restoration, Jenkins Environmental, and Medical News today. So let's unpack this.
Indeed. And before you reach for the bleach, let's
Mhm.
make sure we really understand this surprisingly complex organism.
Okay.
You see, mold isn't just some creepy, crawly thing. It's a type of fungus.
Okay, so more like a mushroom than a cockroach.
Exactly. And it reproduces through microscopic spores.
You okay?
These spores are floating around us all the time, both indoors and out.
Right.
It's when they land on a suitable surface and start multiplying that we get those unwelcome colonies.
Yeah.
Think of it like dandelion seeds blowing in the wind. Just a few are harmless, but give them the right conditions, and suddenly you've got a whole lawn to deal with.
And what are those right conditions for mold? I'm guessing dampness is a big one.
Absolutely. Moisture is key.
Yeah.
But it's not just about puddles on the floor.
Right.
Think leaky pipes, condensation on windows, even that slightly damp spot under your kitchen sink that never quite seems to dry.
Right.
And it's not just any temperature mold. Mold has a bit of a sweet spot, thriving best between 77 and 86 degrees Fahrenheit, according to the Trauma Scene Bioservices article.
So basically, our homes are climate-controlled resorts for mold spores. No wonder they love it here.
Well, when you put it that way. But here's where it gets really interesting. Mold doesn't just need moisture. It needs something to eat, too.
Okay.
We're talking organic material, wood paper,
Yeah.
even dust.
Wait, so those dust bunnies under the bed aren't just unsightly, they're a mold buffet. Okay, that's going on the to-do list. What about those less obvious places mold might be hiding because I'm now eyeing every corner suspiciously?
You're right to be thorough.
Mhm.
Mold love to lurk in those often overlooked spots.
Yeah.
Take that seemingly innocent drip pan under your refrigerator, for example.
Okay.
It's dark, it's often damp, and honestly, how often are we back there really cleaning? The Rainbow Restoration article highlights this as a prime mold hangout.
Okay, I'll admit that's not a spot I think about very often. It's going on the cleaning schedule now, for sure.
A wise move.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of appliances, let's not forget about those front-loading washing machines.
Mm-hmm.
Another haven for mold, unfortunately.
You're telling me I've definitely experienced that funky laundry smell before, even with fresh laundry. Now I'm wondering if it was mold all along.
It's definitely possible.
Okay.
The humid environment, leftover detergent residue. And sometimes, let's be honest, those forgotten loads of laundry create the perfect storm for mold growth.
So what you're saying is my washing machine might be harboring a secret society of mold. This is getting out of hand.
Now, there's no need to panic.
Okay.
Just because there's a little mold doesn't mean your house is condemned. But this brings us to another often overlooked spot. Are you ready for this one?
Hit me with it. At
You
this
want-
point, I'm ready for anything.
Your toothbrush holder.
You've got to be kidding me. The toothbrush holder. I am never going to look at that thing the same way again.
It sounds crazy, but it makes sense when you think about it. It's constantly exposed to moisture and often tucked away in a dark corner. The good news is we can combat mold's tenacity with a little knowledge.
Okay, you've thoroughly grossed me out, so you better have some good news about how to fight back against these microscopic invaders. What about those air conditioner units? That seems like another prime spot for mold to take root.
You're absolutely right. Those window units especially can harbor mold, particularly in the drip trays and filters. Remember all that dust and grime they collect? That's a feast for mold. And then the AC unit itself with its condensation and airflow becomes a superhighway for mold spores spreading them throughout your house. The Jenkins Environmental article mentions that cities with high humidity like New Orleans and Miami often see more issues with mold in HVAC systems.
That makes sense. So regular cleaning is essential, but how do we go beyond just wiping things down? How do we tackle the potential health risks associated with mold?
That's where things get a bit more serious. The Medical News Today article really dives into this. While we often hear mold is bad, it's helpful to understand the specifics.
Yeah, because it's always better to be informed than just vaguely terrified, right? So what's the deal with mold in our health?
For many people, mold is a potent allergen, triggering those familiar symptoms like sneezing, coughing, itchy eyes, and even skin rashes. But it can go deeper than that, impacting the respiratory system. Mold can exacerbate asthma, potentially even triggering attacks, and in those with compromised immune systems, it can lead to more serious lung infections.
Okay, that's concerning. The article mentions something about mycotoxins. What are those exactly?
Mycotoxins are toxic byproducts produced by some types of mold. They can become airborne, and when inhaled can cause a whole host of problems. We often hear about toxic black mold, which refers to Stachybotrys chartarum. While this type of mold is known for its toxicity, any mold can be problematic, especially in larger quantities.
So there's no such thing as a good amount of mold when it comes to our health. It's all relative to the amount and our individual sensitivity.
Precisely. And those with weakened immune systems or pre-existing respiratory conditions need to be especially cautious. But now that we understand the risks, let's shift gears and talk about what we can do to prevent mold from taking over our homes. Knowledge is power, after all.
Okay, knowledge is power. What kind of knowledge will empower me to evict these unwelcome fungal tenants?
The key is to control those factors we discussed earlier, moisture and food sources. It's about making your home less hospitable to mold, not turning it into a sterile laboratory.
Right, because completely mold-free living is probably not realistic, is it?
Not at all.
Mm.
Remember, mold spores are everywhere.
Hmm.
It's about managing them, not eradicating them entirely. And that starts with tackling moisture. Fix those leaks,
Okay.
leaky faucets, dripping pipes, even condensation on windows. Address them promptly.
So no more ignoring that drip, drip, drip coming from the bathroom sink.
Exactly. And ventilation's your best friend.
Right.
Mold loves stagnant air, so keep things moving, especially in those moisture-prone areas like bathrooms and kitchens. Use those exhaust fans, religiously open windows when you can, and if you're in a particularly humid climate, consider investing in a dehumidifier.
Good old-fashioned airflow. I like it. So we've tackled moisture. What about those food sources you mentioned? How do we keep mold from throwing a feast in our homes?
Think of it like this. Even those tiny crumbs under your toaster or dust bunnies under the bed can be a feast for mold. So regular cleaning, especially in damp areas, is key. Pay attention to those often overlooked spots.
Right.
Windowsills, bathroom tiles, behind appliances, even inside those seldom-used cabinets.
And don't forget that drip pan under the refrigerator, which we now know is like a five-star restaurant for mold.
Precisely. But sometimes even with our best efforts, mold can still gain a foothold.
Right.
Maybe there was a hidden leak we didn't catch, or perhaps those pesky spores found a particularly inviting crevice in the basement. That's when knowing when to call in their professionals becomes crucial.
Okay, so at what point do we wave the white flag and bring in the mold-busting cavalry?
If you're seeing large areas of mold, especially that telltale black mold, or if you're experiencing persistent health problems you suspect might be mold-related, don't hesitate to call in a professional.
So better safe than sorry, especially when it comes to our health.
Absolutely. Professionals have the experience, equipment, and specialized knowledge to address the issue safely and effectively. They won't just clean up the visible mold, they'll address the root cause to prevent it from returning. Think of them as mold detectives uncovering hidden moisture problems and ensuring those spores are truly evicted.
This has been incredibly insightful. So to wrap up, what's the biggest takeaway for our listeners when it comes to dealing with household mold?
It all comes back to awareness and a proactive approach. By understanding what mold is, how it spreads, and what it needs to thrive, we empower ourselves to take control of our environments. We move from a place of fear and uncertainty to one of informed action.
I love that. No more living in fear of the invisible spore. And for those times when mold does pop up, we now know how to tackle it head on, whether it's a DIY cleaning mission or calling in the professionals. So to our listeners, stay vigilant, stay informed, and remember, knowledge is power. Until next time, happy cleaning.